Let's go. It's going to be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's going to be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to the Max. And guys, we're getting another week closer to the NFL season starting. I know there's been a lot of news. We're going to wait on that and do a little separate thing tomorrow along with our ACC conference preview. Of course, I'm your host, Sean Garner, and with me is my two co-hosts here, Mr. Gary Vaughn and Randy Isbell.
Hello.
Well, guys, it's been a little bit. Anything happen?
Oh, man, I'll tell you this. My excitement went up for football season, but not just that. It went up for football on a game system. I am so excited about the mini NES. I can play Tecmo Bowl, the original, again. Oh, I am so happy, guys. Playing with Herschel Walker, Bernie Kosar. Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing with that is I like that idea because I can start Anaya off right with starting with the NES or whatever. I mean, she's played a little bit of the DS or whatever, and she plays those tablet games. But I think like getting them to start off at that generation is really cool because you kind of get to learn what we went through, instead of just hey, you just get to learn with all those snazzy new games,
Yeah, back in my day, there were no continues.
Right? You just died.
Exactly.
Well, like I mentioned previously in the ones that we're doing, we're trying to keep these to where they stand by themselves so that at any point you guys want to check back on us and see what we thought where the standings were going to be before the season and what our panel thought as well, as I just realized that I completely forgot to add them into my queue here. Yeah, I mean, we're doing the AFC South on this show, if you didn't get the headline or just hit play for some reason. So we're talking about, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Indianapolis Colts is a little bit going to be a little weird because it's been a long time since we had Eric Hughes on, and I almost felt like he even said, he's like, just think of it as you had Charles Barkley on to talk about the Colts, because he goes off on a few other points that necessarily don't pertain to what was going on at the time. So yeah, we might have a little bit of issue. And then we have Jimmy C back, of course, right, talking Titans too. So he kind of helped me out in a pinch. I needed him I was looking for somebody right there before I went to work, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm here. So appreciate everybody that was able to help us out. And of course, we got one of those Jaguar, Last Word on Sports has a Jaguars writer that's actually from the UK. So you get to hear his perspective of being a UK fan that also enjoys those Jaguars, So
yeah,
quite an eclectic group here, I think. So we're going to start with the Tennessee Titans that finished last in the previous season, and I thought Jimmy C had a pretty realistic take on his team. This is about 13, 14 minutes Jimmy Christopher talking Tennessee Titans. Here we go. All right, well, we start our AFC South preview here by doing the Tennessee Titans, and with me today, Mr. Jimmy Christopher. You can hear him on the Raw Reaction on Monday nights after, of course, that WWE Raw over on the DeMarco Wrestling Radio Network. Jimmy, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I mean, I think, I can't remember exactly. I think you had made some signings or were about to when we had you on before. And, of course, this is now post-draft and everything. How do you like your Titans coming into this training camp?
I'm still pretty skeptical at best. That offensive line is one of my biggest worries, although now that we drafted Conklin out of Michigan State, we have a natural left tackle, so we can move Lawan over to right tackle, which is his natural position. So I think that benefits us a lot. We've still got Warmack in there, but they're all real young guys, so I'm not expecting them to just step in and, be Pro Bowl material. The second of January, I think it hurts and helps us because now we have a back that we can go to. He's a 3-down back. And we drafted Derrick Henry, which, is a great backup, and he's a stud back there if he can learn the offense. But where it hurts the Titans is that I think there will be a lot of higher expectations than what reality allows. We have to remember that Titans' offensive line is very young, like I've already said, and very inexperienced. And I'm hoping for the best. I'd love to see DeMarco Murray run for 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. But I also won't hold my breath as far as that goes.
Were you okay with that move of trading down and not getting Laramie Tunsil, I think, as you talked about with that?
Yeah, from what I understand, he's had a few off-field issues. Whatever those may be, that's the business. I don't really take that into consideration personally unless it's a repeated offense or a larger deal than it is. But I did like the move. Like I say, Jack Conklin is a big boy at left tackle. We drafted him in the first round. We picked up a lot of picks with that trade to, who was, I think, it was St. Louis. And it was a great move for us. Lots of picks, which was the best part of that for us.
So you said you wish that DeMarco Murray would get that 1,000 yards or whatever. How do you think that that's gonna pan out with him and Henry back there? You think it's really gonna be a dynamic duo?
I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that because Derrick Henry reminds me a lot of Wendell White when we had him out of USC, and Wendell White ended up not being good. Bruiser backs are not like the NFL prototype anymore. The NFL prototype are smaller, more agile guys who can get out of the backfield and catch passes and get up the field for yardage. Henry just reminds me of a downhill boulder who, in essence, if he can get started, would be great. And maybe a few years down the line, if we were to release Murray or trade Murray's contract away for more picks or whatnot, and we needed a running back, we could possibly depend on Henry a little bit. But right now, I know that he was, great in Alabama, but right now, I don't know how I feel about him. I don't know if they're going to split carries or not. And if that's the case, keeping fresh legs in the backfield never hurts. But at the same time, they aren't really, I don't think they complement one another's play style. But I could definitely be wrong.
So, on the you had an issue with Mariota getting hurt last year, and you had the problem with Mettenberg coming in and not doing that great and everything, and you had the receivers getting hurt, and now this year you bring in Rashad Matthews to help that receiving core. You have Justin, Hunter, and you got Delaney Walker back there. You've got some changes there to the receiving core to make it better, to help Mariota out with that running game and some of the changes. So you certainly think that you think Mariota will have a much better year this year? You think he's going to be that breakout performer?
I certainly hope so. Mariota has shown tons of positive signs towards being the next, good quarterback. He's smart. He doesn't really give the ball away a lot. He makes good decisions. It's that when you're constantly under attack because of the lackluster offensive line, there's not much that you can do as a quarterback. You mentioned we brought in Matthews, which I think will be a fantastic number 3, a solid slot guy, or if they decide to move him up into the 2 and put Kendall Wright in the slot instead, which is more of his natural position as well. I think that will work out. Dorial Green-Beckham looks to be our number 1, I think. He's a big-bodied kid, 6'3", 220. Great hands, can go up and get the ball, can challenge corners, so I'm really excited to see what he's going to do this year. Hopefully he stays, hopefully the whole team stays healthy, and that goes for the entire league. I hate to see anybody go down. We're already talking about injuries, where people are going to be out for the entire NFL season. We're just starting training camp. But I think as long as we can protect Mariota, he's going to produce. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people.
I mean, everybody in your division got better in some form or fashion. I mean, the Jaguars went nuts in free agency. The Texans also, between the draft and free agency, got better, or you'd think they did at least. And, the Colts gave an extension to Luck and got some pieces in there on defense and on the offensive line. I mean, do you think the Titans are better than last year compared to the division? Or, I mean, is this going to be a war the whole way through like a lot of people are saying? Or what do you think?
I think the Titans are still, like I said, they're the young kid on the team. They're kind of the freshmen on the varsity team. Then, you got the seniors that are probably going to be the Texans. I think they're going to win the division this year if I had to pick one team. I'm not huge on Luck coming off of a serious injury that he sustained last year. I think they'll end up taking either second or third, the Jaguars or that dark horse, because they did make a lot of changes, a lot of solid changes in the offseason, both on defense and offense. They've been drafting phenomenally the past couple of years. They get Fowler back this year, who they lost to an ACL injury before the season started last year, and she's a fantastic edge rusher out of Florida. You look at Indianapolis, who just drafted Taylor Decker out of Ohio State to play on an offensive line and get Luck some protection. And then you look at Houston, who needed a run game in the worst way, and they found a phenomenal back, I think, was going to fit that system wonderfully in Lamar Miller. And you look at us, you go, we're making the right moves, but I don't know that we're ready to take that next step. And I kind of see us falling in the 6-10, 7-9 range at best, which scares me, but I understand that football is it's a rebuilding sport. You're not going to just win now, in a world where everybody wants to win now, but you gotta build your franchise. And, if you can win for 3 or 4 years in a row rather than just winning one season, I'll take that.
So give me a best case and worst case scenario for the team.
Best case, best case is we go undefeated, but I don't think that's much of a reality. I'm thinking worst case scenario is Mariota goes down again for some reason, and we have to depend on a backup quarterback to carry us through the season again, which is something that terrifies me. That's my worst case scenario, though. I mean, the defense needs a lot of work. Still, we don't really have much to speak of on defense outside of a couple defensive linemen. I mean, worst case scenario is probably a 3-13 season or 2-14. Something similar to last year where we end up getting one of the first 2 picks in the draft. Best case scenario, I'm thinking 10-6 because we do have a lot of winnable games, but so many of those teams in the AFC South are meshing already. I think Jacksonville is one of those teams that's going to surprise a lot of people this year. Houston is poised for a breakout season because now they've got a franchise quarterback, franchise running back, and a wide receiver, and Osweiler, Miller, and Hopkins. So as long as their defense can be stout enough to hold offenses down like Jacksonville or Indy, I foresee them, like I said earlier, winning the division. I mean, you've got Andrew Luck in Indianapolis who, you know, he can rally the troops as well as anybody in the NFL. And I think they've looked to him in his first few seasons as a leader, and he's responded incredibly well. So as long as he can stay off of his back, I think he'll be okay. And then you go to Jacksonville and you say, these guys have so much potential. They went and spent money. They're ready to win now. And they could easily come out and win 12 or 13 games if they play to their potential, which is a scary idea that you'll have so much talent in this division finally. But as far as an official prediction, I'm going to say the Titans are probably going to sit at 6-10. I think they improved from last year, but I just don't know if they're ready for that next step. I think Malarkey's got them in the right direction, though, which is a fantastic sign, seeing how we've just kind of been putting on a blindfold for the past 2 years before Mariota got here, and going out on the field and trying to pull something out of nothing. And I think now is going to be the time.
So I know you've kind of talked about it here and there in between the questions, but give me a full final standings for the division.
Okay, full final standings for the division. I'm going to go Houston at 13-3 with a 5-1 division record. I think Jacksonville upsets them one time. I think Jacksonville at 10-6. Indianapolis at 8-8, and then Tennessee at 6-10.
Do you have the Jags making the playoffs?
I think they grab a wild card. Like I said, I'm picking them as my dark horse this year to surprise a lot of people. So I'm going to say yes, they grab one of the wild card spots this year.
All right, Jimmy. I know you got to run to work and stuff, but thank you so much for helping us out.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
All right. Well, that was Jimmy Christopher talking about the Titans. And, I mean, it's hard to say that they're not going to be at the bottom, but because of all the talent in that division. But what do you think? I mean, is there a possibility that they at least grab a third spot, maybe even challenge some of the teams here?
I think the only way they don't finish in last is if one of the other teams has a major injury that they have to go through. If Andrew Luck goes down again, somebody big for Houston, like a J.J. Watt goes down for Houston or something. There's still that chance Jacksonville just never clicks and continues just to be terrible, even though they have all the talent in the world there. But other than that, I just can't see it. I kind of agree with him. I see the 6-10 record just kind of be perfect for Tennessee. I think they are on the rise, and I think they can be a contender in a couple of years. They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree on that for sure. And, I love their running back situation just because you've got a veteran in DeMarco Murray, you've got Henry, a young guy who can definitely make a big difference when it comes to change of pace and doing those type of things. I mean, the quarterback situation is pretty decently solid, I'll say, especially a quarterback that has had a year under his belt who's got a lot of talent. And then, of course, the rest of this team is still a little bit up in the air, to be honest with you. I don't really know that this defense is, even though it's been improved from, of course, the draft, the free agency, and all that stuff, I don't really know that I'm really ready to say that they're going to the next level compared to some of these other teams either. But, I mean, I definitely am agreeing on the fact that they are much improved, and they are a team that I think they're going to beat some teams that we did not think they would beat this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely they have talent across the board. I mean, that receiving core got so much better. I mean, the running game, if it can work, and I think they can. Like, certainly DeMarco Murray can come in there, and if he can sort of play like anything like the DeMarco Murray we saw in Dallas, especially with that offensive line, should be better now with Jack Conklin and getting to move, other offensive linemen around. If he can come in and sort of provide that run game so that it's more balanced, and then when Murray gets tired, you can have Derrick Henry come in and sort of do the same thing, because that's what Derrick Henry does. The only thing is usually Derrick Henry needs a lot of reps to be able to get to the point where he does what he did at Alabama. So that's going to be interesting to see if he can do it on latter reps, or if they do the two running back system after a while or whatever, because we know DeMarco can actually go out there and go go catch some passes. So and that defense was pretty stout last year as well. So they are going to be an interesting team to watch. If Mariota can get hot and stay healthy, they can challenge any of them, because the Colts didn't get any better on defense. The Jaguars, they've got to figure out how to mesh. That's a interesting thing. Houston's going to be a big question mark. See if you get the Osweiler that you think you're signing, and also Lamar Miller. Hope he stays healthy and everything too. So I'm gonna say they wind up fourth, but man, I'll give them a 7-9. I think right now. So we move on now to just looking at the Houston Texans, and last word on sports writer Jared Long takes you through about 17 minutes worth of discussion between him and I here about the team, about several of the moves that happened in the offseason, the big moves that have made them into the sort of favorites for that division now. So let's see, Jared Long talking Houston Texans. Hello, and I am here with first time on the show with us, Jared Long, the Last Word on Sports Houston Texans writer. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing all right. So you don't live near Houston. Have you ever lived near Houston?
Yeah, I was born in Houston, and I grew up in a small suburb called Sugarland.
Okay.
And I recently moved to Dallas, the DFW area, about a year ago, as my wife is originally from here. So I'm a transplant.
Yeah, I lived in Dallas for like 20 years, and then I had to move over here so I could get my my Latino side of the family to help me with the kid. But so were you a fan of the Oilers growing up?
Absolutely. I was born in '88. While trying not to date myself, that's exactly what I just did. I was at the tail end growing up of the Love You Blue era. My dad was a big Oilers fan. He used to tell me stories about Bum Phillips, and he was actually at the Astrodome when they came back from that playoff series, where he has a couple of famous quotes about kicking doors down and stuff like that. And I watched them pretty much until they ended up deciding to go to Tennessee.
Well, did you follow him there, or did you just kind of? I mean, obviously, Houston didn't take too long to come up with the Texans afterwards, but
Yeah, it was only a few years, but it was tough. Guys like Steve McNair, Eddie George, Jeff Fisher, like those were names that were, those were Houston guys, and to see them wearing the same uniform but have a different city or state attached to it was odd. I still think Tennessee Oilers is still weird to say because there's no oil in Tennessee.
right.
And I even cheered for the Titans once they became that, like I said, until Houston got the Texans in 2002. I'm still a big fan of, Jeff Fisher. They had the Music City Miracle against, I think it was the Bills that let them go to eventually the Super Bowl where they lost to the Rams that year by 1 yard. It's one of those things that just goes back with you. And my dad, like I said, he still cheers for the Titans sometimes because, he's got Bud Adams and stuff like that. He used to be, the Oilers. So he still sometimes will cheer for the Titans as long as they're not playing Houston.
Fair enough. So, looking at the team now as it's constructed, or let's go a little bit before that, going into this free agency, what Houston decided to do, then you look into the draft. They obviously went very offense, looks like you corrected some issues. What do you think about Brock Osweiler as a quarterback? Do you think he's the answer now? Do you think he's going to be that guy? And Lamar Miller as well, is he going to be that running back you guys have been searching for now that Arian Foster is no longer there?
Well, I'll start off by saying that Brock Osweiler, a lot of people give the Texans flack for paying Brock as much as Houston did, but I could easily argue that any team he ended up signing with would have paid him comparable money. It just happened to be Houston that signed him. I think the flashes that we saw last year were great. Ultimately, the only way to see if he's ends up being, the answer or a franchise quarterback is to see how he's able to play, this next year and see if he's able to keep up those numbers, and see if he's able to continue that type of momentum he had those 6 or 7 games he played last year and able to carry that through the season. He also has a very strong wide receiver core coming to Houston with, DeAndre Hopkins, who's arguably a top 5 receiver in the league. Jalen Strong, who's a rookie last year, who proved that he was ready to play with the big boys. Not to mention the draft picks that the Texans picked up with Will Fuller out of Notre Dame and, Braxton Miller, the household name out of Ohio State. You've also got Tyler Ervin, who they drafted, who's a running back, but he can do all kinds of crazy things. He was in Wildcat stuff at San Jose State, sorry. And a lot of insiders from training camp, when they had the voluntary OTAs, were saying that the connection between Osweiler and Hopkins is something they haven't seen in a long time, which is good as a Houston fan, only because a lot of times that disconnect is between, the quarterback and the receiver. We've had DeAndre Hopkins, we had Andre Johnson. We were trying to find small puzzle pieces like TJ Yates, who brought him back last year, Brandon Weeden, Matt Schaub, when he was able to do something with the football other than, throw interceptions. We had Mallett and Hoyer. So I think a lot of those guys were stopgap guys only because it was something that we needed but couldn't find. The Cowboys are notorious for the same thing. No offense, as I know you're a Cowboys fan. And then Lamar Miller, I think, probably is the best signing of our offseason, along with Jeff Allen on the offensive line, only because Lamar Miller, I joke with my colleagues up here and call him the truth, only because he's exactly what Houston needs. He's a very explosive runner, and it reminds you almost of Arian Foster pre-injuries. So I absolutely think that he is the answer to replacing Arian Foster, and I hope Arian Foster finds a team. He's a great guy. I met him a few times. And I mean, his work ethic is unmatched by a lot of players in the league today. So I hope he ends up finding something great for him.
So looking at, I mean, in this division, obviously now one of the talks of the town when you talk about the NFL in general, with everything the Jaguars did in free agency and the Colts handing Andrew Luck a big contract and going and getting about 50 offensive linemen, it seemed, and then, Tennessee looks like they've got people healthy and then picked some good choices there. As well in the draft. I mean, so this division is obviously loaded much more than they were last year. Where do you see Houston fitting into all this?
Well, I have to agree with you that every team in the AFC South drafted very, very well. A lot of teams like the Titans and Jaguars, who traditionally were known as, 4, 5, 6 top to win teams, are going to make a bigger impact this upcoming season. It's hard to not pick Houston as the defending AFC South champion to repeat again, albeit there wasn't a healthy Andrew Luck, who is now healthy and a lot richer, who also went to high school in Houston, just as a small tidbit. The Jags got good with, they were able to bring someone in they signed Derrick Henry. Mariota has been a lot better as he's been able to, speed up, and his cognitive abilities on the field have also increased a lot. They brought in, what was his name? Who's the running back?
Oh, the running back, DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray. I don't know why I completely blanked on that. So hopefully he can see a lot of good looks, as the fit as far as the offensive scheme in Tennessee is a lot better fitting for Murray than it was ever in Philadelphia. Blake Bortles, I also believe to be a very good quarterback. He just didn't have a lot of weapons as far as people to throw to. The Jaguars answered a lot of those questions during the draft as well. So I think it will be tight. It'll be a lot better than previous seasons. When Peyton Manning was with the Colts, people would say that the AFC South was one of the toughest divisions in football. And in the few years that he's been out of the AFC South, it's been completely opposite. People look at that division and laugh. So now I would start to see people not respecting, but at least acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of talent coming from that division. So it'll be tough, but I would still pick Houston as the reigning champion.
So where do you see the rest of the teams lining up?
If I were to do it from top to bottom today, I would probably do Houston 1, Indianapolis 2nd, Jacksonville 3, Tennessee 4.
Fair enough. Give me a best case and worst case scenario, realistically, for Houston.
The best case scenario is exactly what we hoped and paid all that money for in the offseason. Brock Osweiler does exactly what he gets paid to do, is able to essentially take that 7-game stretch from last season and turn it into 16 games. But DeAndre Hopkins had a career season last year, and I'm hoping with a consistent quarterback he's able to outdo himself again. And I hope Lamar Miller is able to run for 1,000 yards behind a now newly bolstered offensive line. You've got people like Dwayne Brown, Derek Newton, who are veterans who have been in Houston for as long as I can remember. And now they've got somebody to push for. So I would even go as far as to say they're 11, 12-win team. But that is, like you said, best case scenario. And then obviously it would be playoffs past the first round, where we don't give up 5 turnovers and lose by 30 points in the wild card game. And then worst case is we overpaid Brock, and all we saw last year was a lot like you see a lot of the quarterbacks in college, where you see flashes of greatness and think that they're the next big thing, and turns out it was a small tide or a rush that they were able to keep on going for, a handful of games, and then that's all they've got. Johnny Manziel's a good example of that. He was an amazing, football player in college, and something that didn't translate Tebow as well to the NFL. So I'm just hoping that Brock Osweiler was able to learn and do exactly what he was supposed to as a backup to Manning while he was in Denver. Worst case scenario is Andrew Luck also comes back and earns the contract that he just signed as well, able to actually demolish him. And the Colts, going back to even when Manning was there, have always had the Texans number. For some reason, it's always hard for us to win in Indianapolis, and then they've always come down to Houston and just absolutely destroyed us. So I'm hoping we can turn that around, but worst case scenario is he would continue to do as the Colts have always done to Houston. Also, injuries always is a thing you want to be concerned about. Most of the people that we've signed or have retained are pretty good as far as health. Worst case scenario, just like you said, we've got J.J. Watt, and he can play pretty much any position, so he could probably throw and catch to himself for touchdowns and stuff like that.
That sounds about right for him. So do you? Man, I had a question, and I'll just go with this one while I think of the other one. Is there a player that you think right now? Not a lot of people are talking about him, but by the end of the season, we're going to know who he is.
I would have to say it's either got to be our first-round pick, Will Fuller, the wide receiver at Notre Dame, and I would say it's a sleeper, but for some reason I can't stop watching and reading about this guy from San Jose State, Tyler Ervin. He is fast. Tyler Ervin is so fast, and so is Will Fuller. I mean, the amount of speed, and their 40 times were sub 4.5 at the combine, and now it's a speed league now. It's fast. It used to be all about, it was trending toward physicality and, guys like Des Bryant who are fast still, but they're big, they're meaty, they're, 6'6", 6'7". You're starting to see guys who are a little bit smaller and quicker get more looks. So I'm hoping that if that trend continues, people like Will Fuller, Braxton Miller, and even Tyler Ervin will be able to succeed. Everyone already obviously knows Braxton Miller from what he did at Ohio State, but I would look for Fuller to even make a splash during camp this season and hopefully be that second starter behind DeAndre Hopkins while he competes with Jalen Strong. And look for Tyler Ervin to see looks before the end of the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people were kind of sitting there going, man, thought Will Fuller might get taken in that little receiver run that they had, but, a lot of people figured another one of the, Josh Dotson or somebody else would have gone in front of him. So it's going to be interesting to see if Fuller will get those looks and does wind up being that second or third guy. So there was, issues towards the end of last season with Jadeveon Clowney, of course, with the team and not being able to really play in that what wound up being the last game of the season, and he's had the injury issues and all that stuff. Do you think that we finally get to see the Jadeveon Clowney that, they drafted, or is he kind of one of those where a lot's happened and you don't think we're going to get him reaching that potential?
Well, obviously, as a biased fan, I hope that we see exactly what we drafted. As a lover of sports and taking the bias out of it, it's tough to say. He said so far this offseason he's been quoted saying that he feels the best he's ever felt. A lot of people have questioned his motor and his drive, even while he was still playing in college. They would see 100% hustle one play, and 2 or 3 plays later, it's like he wasn't even on the field. So the motor issues are one thing, as far as concerns, and then injuries as well. I don't think he's played a full season yet without missing at least one game with injury. But like I said, he said he's felt the best he ever has so far since being drafted. So I hope even the league has seen someone who can play next to J.J. Watt, even if someone who's an eighth of as good as Watt is. It's something that nationally will gain a lot of attention because it's something that he gained attention for in college nationally as well.
All right, Jared, you answered all of our questions here. Thank you for helping us out today.
Thank you for having me.
No. All right. There's Jared Long, last word on sports writer for the Houston Texans. They seem to be the favorite, pretty much, out of all the riders. And everybody, just because of their offseason moves and everything else. Do you have them as your favorites for this division?
I think you got to. I mean, just because they were one of the better teams last year in this division, the best really when it comes to making it through the playoffs, and at least getting to that point, and making a deal of it until they met up with a little struggle with Kansas City there. I think that this team is geared for something great. Will they reach that potential? I don't know. Brock Osweiler is a guy that people are already saying, oh, man, he's ready. But, we don't know fully. We haven't seen this guy under the gun for 16 games. We've seen him for a lot of games, not for 16. Also, don't know how he's going to do in the playoffs, things like that as much. But saying that, I like really focusing on the rest of this team. I think you should be excited as a Texans fan if you are one, because you do have Lamar Miller. I think one of the better running backs in this game. Miami ignored him a lot, and he should have gotten the ball a ton more last year. The Houston Texans are going to feed him as much as he can eat. And I think these receivers, oh my goodness, that's another thing. Brock Osweiler, he should be pinching himself, because a lot of other quarterbacks in this league would beg to have a receiving corps as exciting as this one could be. So I think offensively, this team is going to be golden. Defensively, I think that they've made some pretty wise decisions. I think that it could be similar to what they had last year. I really do. J.J. Watt's, if not arguably the best player in this entire league. And then you got to throw in some of these other players that I think on defense are really valuable. So I think this team is going to be the team to beat in this division.
Well, you know where I stand. And this is not a team to beat to me, and it comes down to one man, and that's Osweiler. I don't believe. I can't see it. I don't want to go as far in saying that these guys are going to be down near the bottom of the division, because the rest of the team is stacked. I mean, the defense is great. I'm very much with Gary, where I think Lamar Miller now will be able to show off his true talents. Again, I'm right there with him, where I think he was kind of hamstrung in Miami. They didn't really give him the ball like he should have. So he's going to be great. The receivers there are great, and that will help Osweiler. But I just can't see him leading a team. Is he an improvement over the 73 different quarterbacks that decided to play for Houston last year? That mess that they had? Maybe. I mean, at least his stability. But I can't see him being a huge improvement. And you look at everyone else in this division. Jacksonville got better. Indianapolis, trying to bolster the offensive line to keep Luck healthy. I mean, look at them. They went 8-8 with basically Matt Hasselbeck, who is 97 years old. So it's tough for me to say that they are the top of this division, but they're definitely going to be in the mix. I would probably put them at the 9-7 range, which could very well win a division like this, where it's very evenly matched, and I think they're just going to beat up on each other. But no, I can't call them the class of this division with a quarterback that's Osweiler.
It's difficult, and I don't know that I'm sold on them being the best. I think they are the team to beat, just because right now on paper, as we sit here before training camp even starts, talent-wise, it's going to be hard to beat them now. In my opinion, when it comes to record, are they? I don't know. There's another team in this division. I'm going to give them the same record as the Houston Texans, and I think Randy could probably tell you who that is. But I think it's going to come down to a division record. Who wins this division? And I'll tell you later who I think is going to win this division. But right now, I got them at 10-6 for me.
And Sean, just one more thing I got to point out and see what you think about this. Just looking at their schedule this year, because they did win the division. Not only because everyone in this division obviously has to play the NFC North, and everyone's playing the AFC West, but they're two.
I don't know if that's a division I want to play either.
Well, I know, but that's what everyone in that division is going to play. Right. But the two games that they play different from everyone else, because they won that division, is they go to New England and they go to Denver.
Oof.
That's their two extra games.
Well, when do they go to New England?
Going back to Denver. Yeah.
When do they go back to New England now? That's the question.
They go to New England week 3, so it will be before Tom Brady comes back.
Yeah, so that's a key.
That does help. That
helps a lot because you still don't know what Garoppolo's going to give you. That's certainly going to be interesting when we get to that division, which we won't be doing for a couple of weeks. We'll do the AFC North next, but this is hard because number one, the AFC North, every team in that division is good, if not very good, if not great. If we're talking about the Packers and the strides that the Vikings made last year, so those are 4 teams you're playing that are difficult. I mean, the Bears they're going to be probably. We'll have to see when we get to that, but your division is going to be hard enough, and then you're going to have a Andrew Luck with a chip on his shoulder who wants to prove that he's earned this money that he got. And, I mean, Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be what they are, and I don't think you want to play Denver, Osweiler going into Denver. It's one of those where, okay, Osweiler comes and shows them up, and because offensively they match up well, can the defenses handle each other? That's going to be another story. But if there's going to be a team that knows what Osweiler's going to do, it's Denver. So, man, it's hard for me to say that. I think they are the best team in the division talent-wise on both sides of the ball. I don't think it's hard to be able to say that they're not on that perspective. I think I'm going to go with it. I think Osweiler can. Man, if Osweiler stinks with what he's got, I'm sorry, but there is no excuses for that unless everybody goes down or something. But I kind of have to think that right now, until you beat them, Houston are the top team for me. So we're going to go into what for many years has been the top team, or at least the perennial team there with Andrew Luck and the Colts. We're going to listen to Eric Hughes, who's the first time we've had him on since the big season preview where he's showed up for like 5 minutes and then left. Like I mentioned in the open, he sort of goes off on a couple of tangents. So I apologize for the 24 or so minutes. It's not all on topic. What happens is I ask him a question, he goes off on a tangent, then he eventually answers my question. So I couldn't really stop him somewhere because right when I was going to stop him, he would answer the question that I asked him. So, or he would, because he kind of knew my questions beforehand, he'd start answering another question. So, yeah, but still, the guy has some good info. So, here we go. Eric Hughes on the Colts. All right, I'm here with Indianapolis Colts fan, and he's been on the podcast before, but it's been a long while. It's Eric Hughes. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Sean, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Always a pleasure to have you. So, the Colts last year, they went through, they did pretty well considering losing Andrew Luck to the injuries that he had and having to have a 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck, playing quarterback for most of the year. You go into free agency, it seems like you lost a lot more than you gained, but then in the draft you kind of assess the offensive line issues and whatever. Do you like what they did off-season wise?
Honestly, Sean, I'm pretty torn, man. Unfortunately, for Colts fans, I've been pretty accurate with my previous coach grades over the years under Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano. It's really been a roller coaster of a ride, for the lack of better terms. What I did not like is the fact that Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano both got contractual extensions after the offseason, after what everybody thought was pretty disappointing under the first contracts. Actually, Chuck Pagano got signed to a new 4-year deal, and Grigson got 3 years added onto his. But It's a matter of just the Colts fans have had higher expectations. I mean, let's be real. Since Andrew Luck was drafted in 2012, Colts fans, especially diehard Colts fans that I know, have been expecting, a complete takeover from the Peyton Manning era. Here we have Andrew Luck, who was given the highest draft grade since John Elway. So, there's very high expectations here. And, and you browse over Pagano's, history here with the Colts. He got leukemia in his first year. Arians took over after the bye week. Pagano, he's 41-23 as the head coach. And it's something that seems to be a respectable record. But when you dig into it, Pagano is 33. I'm sorry, 15-33 outside of the AFC South. And with my poor education, I believe that adds up to 31.25% win percentage outside of the AFC South. So I kind of went off subject of the draft in the off season, but here we are yet again. And really the main storyline for Colts fans that have expectations going into this 2016-17 season is Grigson and Pagano going to yet again put together some overrated Colts team that's going to get a lot of off-season love. And then come December, here we are staring down a 10-6 record, maybe fighting for Houston just to get the division. And maybe get a wild card spot. And are we even close as we think we are to being Super Bowl contenders with just giving Luck the highest guaranteed contract in NFL history? So there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team. I think there's a lot of legitimate question marks surrounding this team that date back to last season and the defense and the offensive line. Or, is Luck going to continue to be the one of the three most abused quarterbacks since he's been drafted in 2012? I mean, he's been hit 375 times in his first 4 years in the league. Is he going to be smart enough to start using his athletic ability to slide and quit preventing all of these unnecessary hits? And then, we can get into the losses. We lost Kobe Fleener, who I thought the last 2 years became a very, very productive player for Andrew Luck, a very reliable target. His hands got a lot better, especially with Dwayne Allen going down. It was seeming like, knick-knack injury after knick-knack injury. We lost Jarrell Freeman, we lost Dwight Lowry and Jonathan Newsom, and we pretty much gave up on the one-year wonder and Andre Johnson. Not selecting to bring him back for another year. Something that really caught my interest was a quote from recently lost tight end Kobe Fleener. After he got signed by New Orleans, he decided to go pretty vocal about his opinion of the Colts locker room pertaining to last season. And I'm pulling this quote from, I believe, let me check my, it's Athlon Sports, but he's talking, he says, I think it's one of those situations where it's really reveals character. The guys that keep fighting through it, knowing we may not have our star quarterback out in the field, but we still have a chance to win the game. Those are the guys you want kind of in your corner. And the other guys, it becomes pretty apparent that they're just along for the ride. That kind of stuck with me because looking back on last year, you could see the faces of, not only Colts fans, but Colts players as when Andrew Luck went down with that lacerated kidney, it was like, oh, there's the season, it's gone. But you look at the NFL and it's such a league of parity, and you see teams all the time that rally behind players, veteran players, especially veteran quarterbacks, especially one that like Matt Hasselbeck that's already been to a Super Bowl before.
And it just seemed like the team, especially Phil, one of the most, I believe the Colts might have been the oldest team in the league last year. And it just seemed like a team with that many veterans just seemed to kind of just cash in. You know, it was just about checks. You know, it was little heart. And that's why, you know, Houston ran off, I believe it was 6-2 record or something like that to finish the season and win the division and make the playoffs. And the Colts missed the playoffs just because Colts just straight up black heart.
Yeah, I mean, it was, whoa. So apparently my computer decides that it likes to do random things with my headset. But anyway, so, you know, you're right about that. It seemed like the team was, you know, for the most part, you know, I know Kobe Fleener might have had a point, and then you kind of commented about them sort of cashing in checks, but they were still hanging around for the most part. But I mean, there's only so much you can expect a 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck that can barely move to be able to do when they've already got the offensive line issues. And that's why I said, I mean, they drafted 4 offensive linemen, including the highly touted Ryan Kelly, with their first pick. Do you think this now addresses the problems they had last season?
No. No, I don't. I think Ryan Kelly was a home run. I think that was a good pick. But I think after that, now you're talking about rotation players and possibly 2 draft picks that might not even make the final roster. I mean, outside of, you know, they're going to sign a rookie deal, but I mean, like, they're not going to be implemented into the offense because they're inexperienced. And from everything that I'm being told, there's just the early rookie technique problems. I know that, I'm sorry, I just had it right in front of me.
Are you looking for the lineman they drafted?
Yeah, I just had because I had the entire draft.
They drafted Ryan Kelly, the Raven Clark.
Yeah, Le'Veon Clark. Raven Clark, and then when they came back and got Joe Haig in the 5th round, and you know they got the center out of Iowa, and you know that's a cute pick. I actually like that pick. I guess for the value that you get it at there, very late in the 7th round, almost at the very end of the draft. And Iowa has put out some pretty consistent offensive linemen if you go back and look at the draft history. But there was an opportunity, if I'm not mistaken, that the Colts could have gotten Nick Martin from Notre Dame instead of trading out of that spot in the 2nd round and then drafting T.J. Green, which, I mean, that's a great pick when we need help at safety, and T.J. Green's a headhunter. But you could have completely locked up your offensive line in the first 2 picks of the draft without having to trade back and without having to get these players that might be rotational players. You might talk about players who might get cut. I mean, I felt like Grixon really played it safe because everybody knows he should have been gone anyway. I mean, let's be real here. Grixon and Pagano should have been gone. They're on a mercy leash here with Irsay. I don't know if it's because he's sober or maybe he's not. I don't know what's going on, but I don't know. I didn't agree with or understand giving the Grixon 3-year extension and signing Pagano to 4 more years. I honestly feel like Pagano's one of the worst in-game coaches in the NFL, easily. He just seems to not make adjustments in games. I don't understand. He seems like he's just befuddled on the sideline. He's just looking. You know, it always gives that. You always show Pagano in game. He's like bent over at the waist, hands on his knees. Like he has the headphones on. He's just kind of just staring out into the field. Like I don't know. That sums up his whole coaching career so far in Indianapolis to me. But I felt like there was an opportunity to maybe draft Nick Martin in the second round and come back and steal a corner and a safety late in the draft from Southern Utah that maybe would have fit the scheme and kind of the direction that the NFL is going now with getting a lot of size on the outside and you're getting a lot of heavy hitters coming in from safety. You know, it's kind of the way the league is going now. You know, you got Richard Sherman that just came on the scene in the last 3 years because he's a 6 foot plus, 200 plus pound corner that can get physical and he can kind of help, you know, at least detain this, you know, newfound passing game in the area that this NFL is going in now. So I believe size is definitely valuable at corner. And there was just, I don't know, I just feel like Gregson traded out of that spot to acquire more draft picks to just play it safe. Like, hey, I made like 7 draft picks, so if 3 or 4 of them pan out, then that's pretty good math. I don't know, it doesn't seem like the best general managing once again to me. But there's hope. You play in the AFC South. You got Jacksonville and Tennessee still. I'm really tired of hearing of all this woo-ha, hoo-ha about the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of starting to become the Oakland Raiders of the AFC South. Every year they're supposed to do something and they never do. If you're talking to somebody that's predicted the Oakland Raiders to make noise in the AFC West, I actually predicted the Jack Del Rio hire to Oakland Raiders, but that's neither here nor there. But, I mean, you got the Titans. They're probably going to finish last in the division. Jaguars, if they get half the production that everybody's talking about from Miles Jack to Flowers, you know, yada, yada, yada. Bortles and the Hearns, and I mean, if they're what they were last year towards the end of the season, then they might be an 8-8 team. But I mean, that's living up to about all their potential right now. I believe the Texans are the number 1 team in the division, possibly to even beat out the Colts. And that's all going to fall on the shoulders of Brock Osweiler. They let go of key franchise players of the last couple of years, and Andre Johnson and Arian Foster now this season. But they brought in help. They drafted help. I mean, you're talking about bringing in Will Fuller and Braxton Miller on the outside. I mean, that guy alone right there is going to open up the offense completely for Brock Osweiler. Then if Jadeveon Clowney could even remotely start to be productive and look anything like the number 1 pick that he was a few years ago, then that defense should easily be top 5. The problem still is the unknown at the quarterback position. Osweiler is almost 6'8", and I'd hate to wish injury on anybody, but that's a position that's not very beneficial to be super tall at. Your knees are wide open in the NFL, and if that line can't start getting together, I think they had something around. I had it right in front of me just a few minutes ago. It was almost somewhat close to like double digit different starting offensive linemen through the season due to injury or inconsistent play. I mean, they've got to shore up that offensive line. I mean, just like any other team in the NFL. Bright spot is Bill O'Brien. He might be the best coach in the division. So if I'm making the prediction right now, I might say, man, Colts 11-5, Texans 10-6. I'm not sure, AFC South and wild card team, one of your wild card teams at least. I do think that if Osweiler stays healthy and he can do what he did in Denver with the additions of Fuller and Braxton Miller to DeAndre Hopkins, and that is brought in Lamar Miller. Yeah, that is brought in Lamar Miller. Alfred Brew is healthy now, and that defense is stacked, man. If they get anything out of Vince Wilfork, I mean, come on. Whitney Merciless, who I used to argue with his fans online 2 years ago on Facebook. Believe that. Imagine that, right? They was all calling for his head. He's a bum. He's garbage. We got Clowney now. They're going to cut Merciless. I'm like, no, they're not. Like, what are you talking about? 12 sacks last year. Right? So, I mean, only 5.5 sacks from the reigning 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt. So, I mean, they're stacked on defense, man. So, if that happens, it's gonna be a fun division to watch. Much more fun than in the previous 4 or 5 years, for sure. It's just funny because you look throughout the division, Colts offensive line and front seven is a big question mark. Quarterback's a question mark for Houston. Possibly the running game, unless Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue can keep it going. Then you got Jacksonville, obviously, still a question mark at quarterback as long as Bortles keeps progressing. Marquise Lee, it looks like this might be his last year in Jacksonville. If he can't start putting up some numbers, and you got a lot of young talent on the defensive end that needs to do something, because that's a city right there that ain't had a playoff win in a long time. Titans got an upside. Malarkey coming in. You got Mariota. Hopefully he's going to be healthy. They got an atrocious offensive line, so hopefully they've put a few pieces together there. Switched a few coordinators, and I don't know. Should be an interesting vision, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's about as much as you could probably ask from me.
Give me a best case and worst case scenario for the Colts.
Well, obviously, best case scenario is Super Bowl win. I mean, that's any team.
You think realistically they can get there, though?
I think this is a very wild card year. I think you have Tom Brady's suspension that's not going to get overturned. He's going to sit 4 games. So I think that opens up the AFC East a little bit.
Which you were one of the few people I think I saw that were saying, hey, this ain't over. He's going to get suspended.
I knew it was never over. There was a lot of legal language in there that you had to really pay attention to and really have an understanding of the concept of in which it was used. And if you followed it close enough, unfortunately, I did. Because I spent a lot of time wasted on something that should have been wrapped up in a very short period of time. But, I mean, everything that was reported initially was basically found true in the highest courts. And they're not going to go back, and they're not going to keep, having appeals and wasting the court's time to dispute things that cannot be disputed. And I'm not even going to get on the whole, does it tarnish Tom Brady's legacy, blah, blah, blah. I could take up 30 minutes of your podcast talking about that crap. But I just knew that eventually it was going to happen. It's unfortunate I'm not going to say it had anything to do with the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago against the Colts. But I do know that it does have an impact in the football game. And anybody that's played football long enough and actually in a competition or a competitive level, high school or above, would know that if you have a fully deflated football compared to a football that's even remotely deflated, that there is a higher chance of probability of certain things happening. catching, fumbling, gripping, flipping, the whole nine. So it's unfortunate. I do think the Patriots were the better team, and Andrew Luck. I just had right in front of him earlier. I think Andrew Luck has something like 55 interceptions in 55 games, 32 fumbles with like 15 or 17 lost. So yeah, I mean he's played his part in those big game losses, and that's not something that I think was a ultimate determining factor in the blowout win. I was like, what, they scored like 52 points? I was something stupid. But if you look over the course of their career, you can't deny the fact that there's a lot of question marks around the legacies of certain coaches and players, and the integrity of the game was definitely jeopardized in many now reports. So it's unfortunate, but it's happened. It's happened in every major sport. You know, we've had referee issues in the NBA, steroid issues in Major League Baseball, and now here or there issues in the NFL. So, I mean, it's part of the highest level of competition, and you're going to have that when people are getting paid millions of dollars to spend every second they have to win at the highest level.
All right, Eric. Well, you pretty much kind of answered everything we had, so I want to thank you for coming on, man, and helping us out.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, after that, I feel like I need to take a drink. Yeah.
A whiskey drink, a vodka drink, one of those kind.
I don't know how many he might have had at that point, but I mean, he did sort of, like I said, answer the questions. He just took his own time to do so. I mean, he even got you into some Deflategate there, Randy, so I'm sure you were just amused at that conversation. But
at least he didn't bring up the man that is not to be named.
That man was named earlier in this podcast, just a note.
One of us named him?
One of our guys, one of our guests on the interviews.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Well, the Colts, I mean, he had the Colts going first. So do you think that they're the team to beat in this division then?
If we're talking about fighting for the last spot in this division, I would say that. Not the team to beat, though. Yeah, in my opinion, I think that Andrew Luck, he could be on his revenge tour, but he won't get as lucky as Roman Reigns and have his redemption. I feel like that he is going to be in a situation where he's going to be good, he's going to make some strides, but I just don't know if that team is going to gel. I still think they've got some growing to do. They did some things, trying to work on the offensive line. I don't think it was worked on well enough to get them as far as they want to be. And I still don't like this defense as a whole. I just do not. I'm not overly thrilled with it. Not saying that they're going to be any worse than the Titans. I still think that they're better than the Titans, but I feel like the other two teams in this division, besides themselves and the Titans, are a little bit more ready to go, if I can say it that way. If you look in my personal opinion, Randy, you tell me what you think, but in my personal opinion, this is the mirror opposite of what the Texans are. Quarterback is established, ready to go today, compared to the Texans, who we don't know. We're still thinking he is, but we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the quarterback is there. The defense is not quite there. I do like a lot of their moves where they really try to bolster the offensive line just to try to save Andrew Luck, but really that was kind of detrimental to some of the talent that they have around the team. I mean, T.Y. Hilton's a great receiver. Dante Moncrief's not terrible, but, I mean, who else are you going to throw it to? I'm not huge on Frank Gore being your main running back, even though, I mean, it is the Colts. They don't run the ball that much. And I'm actually kind of...
Is he 85 years old this year? How old is Frank Gore?
He's a couple years younger than Hasselbeck, so it's like 83. And what the hell
Okay.
just turned on? There we go. But I kind of am with him with Chuck Pagano not being the greatest coach out there. I mean, making terrible in-game decisions, and I think that kind of hinders them a little bit. I think they'll be in the mix. I don't think they'll be as far down as where Gary is saying. But 8-8, maybe 9-7, be in the hunt for the division title, but just falling a little short.
I had the Titans going 6-10. I got this team going 7-9.
Wow. I don't think that they're going to be first, but I think, battling for second isn't too far out of the spectrum. Look, Andrew Luck, again, y'all mentioned the revenge tour. This dude wants to prove that he earned that big contract that he got, and that offense is not changed at all. Yeah, Frank Gore got older, but he's still got T.Y. Hilton. He's got Dante Moncrief. He's got Dwayne Allen still. He's missing Cody Fleer, but he'll be all right. And I think, the defense is going to be okay. They're going to be the most problematic issue for the Colts is how much is Andrew Luck going to have to outscore some teams, and when he gets into that division where he's got to play some really tough defenses, are they going to be able to hold up for him? But I think it's all about the offensive line, and the offensive line got certainly better between the draft and who they signed. I think if they protect Andrew Luck, you're looking at, talk about fantasy numbers, you're looking at a guy that's going to be scoring some points for you, and you're looking at a guy that's going to be scoring points for the Colts, and I think he can win you 2 or 3 games by himself. So, and we've also got to think about just going into these divisional games where anybody can win. I think those are toss-ups. They're not going to go undefeated against the division like they normally have been. But if they can beat some of these other teams that they got on their schedule, they're in the mix. And I definitely, I don't know if I have them, but I know they're going to be competing there. I got them second for sure. It's hard for me not to think that, again, unless Andrew Luck goes down, that team's not going to be competing. I know both of you guys don't seem to feel the same, but
I just feel like they're going to need Andrew Luck to win 2 or 3 games to make 7-9. It's my personal opinion.
Dang, that bad, huh?
Yeah, I don't have enough confidence in that defense, and I just don't have enough confidence in this offensive line. Even though they have added and worked things around a little bit, I don't have enough confidence in the offensive line that Andrew Luck is going to be able to stay upright as much as he needs to. I just feel like Frank Gore's great for what he does. But outside of him, T.Y. Hilton can't do it by himself. And Moncrief, let's be honest, guys, average at best. So there's not enough talent right now on that offense.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll get to our final standings after we get to our final contributor for this podcast. I saved the best for last, pretty much. William Frost, last word on sports writer for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the darling of this division, the team that everybody has been talking about since that free agency started. About 17 minutes here with Mr. Frost, talking about how it is to be a American football fan in England, being a Jags fan, and just talking about the team and the division. So here we go. All right, I'm here with William Frost, last word on sports writer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So you live in England.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Did you become a Jaguars fan just because they go over there so much, or how did that happen?
Well, I was a New York Giants fan until about 2008, and then watched the league as a neutral. But I'm going to watch them this year in October. So because they're here so much, it sort of made sense for me to find a regular team as regular as I can over here.
So as someone that lives there, would you want to see the league bring a team to London permanently?
Selfishly, I'd love to, because obviously it means that I could watch 8 games a year instead of 1. But whether or not it makes sense, because obviously it's only a 7-hour layover to the East Coast, but if you're travelling from the West Coast to the UK and then back to the West Coast, it takes its toll. So it's probably logistically unwise, but I think the majority of the UK fan base would love to see a team over here.
So how is it? I mean, obviously, the real football over there is huge. I mean, I watch the Premiership over here all the time, and it seems like what the NFL is trying to do over here is almost the Premiership has gotten it even bigger here in the United States than what the NFL has been able to do there in the UK. Like, how is that perception of American football over there?
It's difficult because the market for the Premiership, because obviously you've got the world's best players there, and it's so much more globalized than the NFL is, because obviously everyone from the NFL comes from the United States, well, predominantly. So you don't see many British athletes. I think there's only a handful there. Probably Jay Ajayi is the most notable one for the Miami Dolphins, but other than that, I think there's so many different cultures that are part of the Premiership, whereas the NFL isn't able to make that same market shift that the Premier League is.
So looking at Jacksonville, I mean, they obviously made a lot of moves in free agency. I mean,
11-5 doesn't leave you with much of a squad to build on. So
right, and with the draft and everything, what do you make of all the moves they did? Are you in favor of most of them?
Most of them, yeah. I think putting the first, obviously I couldn't have picked a better first two picks. I mean, Jalen Ramsey and Miles Jack were probably two of the top 5 prospects going into the draft before Jack's unfortunate injury news broke. But I think adding Yannick Ngakoue is probably a sensible move, because we didn't have a lot of depth for a 4-3 system. But I think the offensive line is that bad that I think it probably needed a youthful injection rather than the Mackenzie Bernardy that we picked up in free agency.
So I mean, you added Malik Jackson, and added a safety here, and added
Sean Gibson.
I mean, you really stacked that defense. Do you think now, obviously better than last year, but do you think they're gonna mesh together to really be one of the best in the league?
I mean, like you said, it's not hard to be better than last year's, but I think we've added people in the right spots. I think anywhere that was a position of desperate need, obviously we couldn't really see how the edge rush tandem with Fowler was going, because he missed the entire season, unfortunately. But I think that whether or not they can challenge to be one of the best in the league is difficult, because obviously it's the first year that they're playing together. I think if you look at teams like the Oakland Raiders, they're probably in a much better position to be primed this year with the likes of Khalil Mack than we would be.
You mentioned Miles Jack. Do you see him being an immediate help, or do you think have they said anything about his injury affecting his play this year?
By the looks of things, he looks ready to go. So I think it will be difficult to see how he wouldn't become a day one starter. I think he was ready to become a day one starter when he left college, and I think that if you touch wood and cross every part of the body that you can, then he's able to make an instant impact on the team.
Jalen Ramsey also had an injury. I think they said he'd be ready by the time we get to camp. Have they said anything about that affecting him at all? And how do you see his first season going? Obviously, he's a guy that he can play sort of in different spots, kind of do what Troy Polamalu used to do for the Steelers and that kind of thing. Do you see him kind of being even more relevant to last year, what Tyrann Mathieu did for the Cardinals, just kind of be everywhere and just be a free safety sort of?
I think you got to look at the fact that he was compared to two players coming out of college, and that was Deion Sanders and Charles Woodson. I think that shows that he's got the ability to become a playmaker anywhere that he wants in the secondary. But I think that if you were to compare him to someone like Tyrann Mathieu, I think Tyrann Mathieu's got the ability to almost play that Buchanan role and become a linebacker when needed, and he's maybe not the quickest in order to go in outside coverage. So I think on draft night you heard Ramsey say that he is a corner that can play safety, not a safety that can play corner, whereas Matthew sees himself as a playmaker and wants to become paid as a playmaker so that he isn't tied down to that safety position. So I think what with Cyprian and now Deshaun Gibson in the Jaguars secondary, I think it would be unwise to have Jalen Ramsey moved across the secondary and try and establish him as a proper shutdown corner opposite Prince Amukamara.
Do you, so moving on to the offense now, I mean, obviously Blake Bortles had one heck of a year with, his two receivers and everything going on with that offense, but he obviously had issues with committing turnovers and his offensive line being bad, obviously just it seemed like every time he took a snap, there was somebody in his face, and he's having to run around and do stuff. I mean, do you think that he improves this year, and does he correct some of those issues he had last year?
I think that you look at the fact that he threw 15 picks last year, I think.
Right. Somewhere
you
around
look at that and you think, wow, he needs to sharpen up, he needs to read defenses better. But I think that like you said, every single time he took a snap, there was someone in his face, and I mean, you can't expect to establish a passing game with no pass protection at all. So if you look at Luke Joeckel, our top-rated offensive tackle, I think he struggled in his first. Is he in his fourth season now? So he struggled massively in terms of acclimating himself to the league. He could potentially be better off if you had invested in proper tackles such as. I think Mitchell Schwartz is in free agency and had a lights out year for the Cleveland Browns in their rather shoddy season. And he ended up getting paid huge by Kansas City, his brother's former team. And I think if we'd have been a little bit more aggressive in the tackle spot, then we'd have been much more assured on the offensive line, and maybe that would have given Bortles the platform he needs to improve. But I think if he threw 30-plus touchdowns last year, he looked like he was just going out there and having fun, and that he'd really commanded the team for the first time. And I think that will become more prominent this year. And I think with the establishment of a run game as well, with Chris Ivory moving in, so long as Beecham and Bernardo are able to do something for the offensive line, even though Bernardo's only started 2 games for the Cowboys in the last 2 years. I think that, along with another phenomenal season by the Allen brothers, will be pivotal to his success in Jacksonville.
We saw T.J. Yeldon get used some here and there. He obviously had an injury that kept him out for a little bit. Now you bring in Chris Ivory, who also is injury-prone a tad. Do you see them kind of using them as dual running backs? Have Ivory kind of pounding, and Yeldon, you kind of use him to spell him and more in the speed situation, establishing more of that running game so it's not all on Bortles and the two Allens?
I think that they have to focus somewhat on the running game because it just wasn't there last year, and I think Teacher's had a rough time. He came in and was obviously expected to do an awful lot straight away. But I think that he would definitely improve due to Chris Ivory's presence. I think Chris Ivory may be able to teach him another dimension to the game he didn't really have before in terms of being able to bruise defenders. But I definitely think that, Chris is probably your 3-down running back. Try and move the chains and pound some of those ugly defensive lines that you got in the AFC South.
Speaking of that AFC South, it seemed like every team in that South got better, including your Jaguars. I mean, Houston just nailed it everywhere as far as bringing in talent. You know, the Colts went and got Luck a big contract and found some offensive line help, it seems, and the Titans at least have another year and added that running back help and everything. A lot of people picking Jaguars as the darling right now for the division. Are you one of those that's in that hype machine, or are you being a little bit more tempered with that?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, draft day was probably my favourite day of the last footballing year. I think it gave me a lot of hope for 2016. But I mean, you just look at JJ Watt and the fact you got to play him, Jadeveon Clowney, and the rest of that team twice a year, and you look at whether you debate whether or not our secondary and our pass rush can improve automatically. And I think playing a healthy Andrew Luck twice a year, and with the tough road schedule that we've got, I mean, I would definitely say that we're going to improve on 2015. I don't think that you can go 5-11 out of the players we added and not improve. I think that's pretty much impossible. But no, I wouldn't say that we're guaranteed a playoff spot.
So, where are you seeing the Jaguars record-wise? Are you seeing them like competing for a wild card, really, or?
I would personally say around about 10-6. I'd imagine looking at the games we've got to play, but I don't think that that's enough to win the division this year. I don't know. Depending on head-to-heads, I don't know whether or not that's good enough to get a wildcard spot in the division this year, because, I mean, the Colts got a lot better, and you can't help but win when you've got Andrew Luck playing well on your team. I think he wills you to win more than most players in the league do. And as you said, the Texans have only got better, and Watt's only going to improve. And I think with Brock finally getting hold of the team and being able to call a team his own, I think he's really going to shine this year to some extent. So while I expect a lot of wins, while I would say that we're going to probably be around for that 9-7, 10-6 mark, I don't know whether or not that necessarily guarantees playoff.
So where do you see the final standings going for that division?
I think I'll go from the bottom up, because the bottom's the easiest place to put it. I think the Titans have got to come forth for that. I personally loved Marcus coming out of Oregon, and I think that he will become one of the league's elite players. But he's not got enough help up front in order to let DeMarco Murray do DeMarco Murray. And that pretty much for me, it puts them where they are, where they have been for the last few years now. I'd probably, the fan in me would say it'd go Houston, Colts, Jaguars, but I'd probably say Houston, Jaguars, Colts. I just think that whether or not he's got the best team around him or not, I think that Andrew Luck has that unbelievable ability to win. And you look at the Kansas City game in the playoffs a few years ago, no one gave him the fighting chance, and I think he's going to bring that same sort of attitude again and really, really propel this team, and hopefully for his sake, challenge for Super Bowl that he hasn't been able to get so far.
So give me a best and worst case realistic scenario for the Jaguars this season.
So the worst case is that Jack can't play football, and he gets through training camp and his knee gives him another setback, and key players get injured. You never know how productive Fowler's going to be. You can't help but feel like if one of the running backs and a receiver goes down, then that's the offense out of the question as well. So I mean, by that stretch, we could end up with a record very similar to last year if things don't go our way, because we have a very tough schedule ahead of us despite having a very talented team now. In terms of a best case scenario in realistic sense, I'd probably say we'd have a chance at the divisional round of the playoffs. I don't know whether or not we'd get the bye week or not. It'd obviously be a nice change of pace for us because it hasn't happened in a while. But I'd definitely say that if we win the division, then we've got a chance, but it just depends on who you draw.
So who's the player that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now, but you think is going to be someone that's going to make a statement on that team by?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd say Prince and Mikamara got nowhere near enough attention as he should have done. A couple of months to a year ago now, I saw Matt Miller, NFL draft scout, say that he believes that Amukamara's got the tools to become a top 5 corner in this league. And you see players like Josh Norman, who hadn't really made a name for themselves for 2015, getting paid like superstars because obviously Prince is on a 1-year deal here in Jacksonville, and I think that if he really puts himself to it and tries to achieve, then he could get paid like New York wouldn't pay him. So yeah, I'd probably say him.
All right, William, you answered all of our questions here. I want to thank you for helping us out.
No worries, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that was William Frost, last word on sports writer for the Jacksonville Jaguars, talking, of course, those Jags. He seemed sort of realistic about where he thought they would land. I mean, they are the darling of this division now after everything that's happened. I know you're high on them, Randy.
Yeah, absolutely. I just absolutely fell in love watching them last season. Just their offense is ridiculous. And now you add in Miles Jack and Jalen Ramsey, and you get Dante Fowler back, and just some of Malik Jackson that they added to the defense. I think the defense is going to be much better. I think the offense, the pressure is going to be off of them a little bit. Maybe Blake Bortles will make a few more better decisions. I do wish they would have addressed the offensive line a little bit more. I mean, they picked up a few pieces, but that was definitely a weakness for the team. But I love this team. I really think that they're going to go far. I'm one of those guys that is just super high on this team and think they're about to break out. And yes, I mean, I'm sure people have been saying it all year. Or I mean, not all year, but I mean, over the last few years. But I really think this is their year.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, and I'm thrilled for a lot of the reasons Randy kind of spoke about, because of those additions that they had to this team that really helped them out in free agency and, of course, with the draft. And I think that really, when it comes down to it, it's really going to depend, how healthy they can stay. Because at this point right now, I think they're going to battle it out for that number 1 spot in this division. And, like I said previously, I don't think it's between all 4 teams. To me, it's between this team and the Houston Texans. And I think, like I said, they got potential. They've got lots of guys that can really help this team. But, is Miles Jack going to come back and, get injured after, maybe playing games in training camp? Or, is Jalen Ramsey going to be okay, after he, had his misfortune happen to him? So things like that. What kind of question marks is this team going to end up with? We don't know. But I'm thrilled about them, and I'm excited. And, I kind of feel like, they're going to share the top spot. Now, only one team can win the division. But I think they're going to share that top, spot.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard for me because I'm high on the Jags too, but I think we're giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt here. There's a lot of meshing of a team that you have to do, especially with the changes that they made defensively. Yeah, offensively they're going to click. It's the same team other than adding Chris Ivory, who's just going to be able to pound the ball for them and add a different dimension that they didn't have last year. I think that's going to help certainly, but we have seen Chris Ivory get hurt a lot. And we have, is that offensive line truly going to be better to where, Bortles is not going to have somebody in his face all the time, and that's going to be a question mark. I mean, it's not like, at least the Texans and Titans aren't going to be trying to do that. I mean, Colts we have to see, but I think they'll be fighting with the Colts certainly for that second spot. Who knows if they get on a nice run if they don't fight for that first, but I'm going to be going right now. I'm going to go ahead and just have them in that third, I think. But let's go ahead and get to those final standings real quick. Go ahead, Randy.
All right. I think we're all going to agree that Tennessee at the bottom. I have them 6-10, and then just a jumble for me. Let's go Indianapolis and Houston at 9-7, and Jacksonville at 10-6.
Looking at it for me personally, I got Tennessee at 6-10 as well. I've got the Indianapolis Colts going at 7-9. I just don't know what's going to happen there. I feel like once again they're mirror image in complete opposite directions with the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans are going to do pretty well. I think that this division is going to beat up on each other, but I also think that there's going to be some good games take place in this division. But saying that, 10-6 for the Texans, and I fully believe the Jacksonville Jaguars will be 10-6 as well. But they'll win an extra game in the division and be able to win this division.
I'm gonna have the Titans at 7-9. I'm gonna have the Jaguars at 10-6, tied with the Colts. Colts get the tiebreaker, and I'm gonna have the Houston Texans at 11-5, win the division again. That's how I'm going with this. It's going to be close. I think all the teams have the shot. Obviously, they have the pieces that they can compete at least in their division, and then you never know when you get out of that what's going to happen here. Schedule-wise, it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, that's going to do it for us here. We'll be back on Monday night, Tuesday morning pretty much, with the ACC. Justin Gordon, the last word on sports. He covers the Miami Hurricanes and the ACC. He helps us break down that conference. And we'll also be kind of if you're on all of our feeds, not Last Word itself, but if you're on, listen to us on Spreaker, iTunes, and Stitcher, wherever else we are at, you can listen to about a 35-minute special news edition where we talk about all the latest, Von Miller signing and everything else that's been going on. So you'll get 2 of those from us, and just make sure you check out everything else on WTM Network, and of course on the Wrestling Podcast we'll be doing that Raw right before that draft and everything else. Of course, even Kevin Owens had to chime in that he said, well, we found out that 6 NXT guys are going to get drafted. I found out all the NXT people said it at the same time. So, Kevin Owens having to let you know, and Rusev's also telling all the NXT people to get ready because the Accolade is going to stretch your back. So, those WWE guys are not too happy about the NXT people coming up per se, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Of course, we'll be back with the AFC North on the next Friday morning edition. So, get ready for us to talk. We'll have, of course, our friends Mike and why am I forgetting your friends? Robert Hagan to talk about the Steelers and Ravens, and we'll have to see who's around for those Bengals and Browns. But should be an interesting dichotomy of teams there to talk about. Well, until then, guys, enjoy the week, and we'll see you later.